dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, pa, di di pa pa di di do, ribba boop pa beep ba do, di bi da bo di ba do, di bo bo. Does this look backward to you guys? It looks backward to me. I don't know if I goofed this camera or if it's just always been that way. I'm a little tired. Not in a bad way either. It's just I did go kind of bed. I did go to bed kind of late last night, and I've actually been getting up uh, in time to get a little bit of writing done, paragraph at a time. By the end of the year, I'll have a page. All right. Just a couple picks of the week. It was a largish week. I didn't even get a chance to read anything last week. In fact, I just read these picks of last week today, like just mere moments ago. Ooh, a peek behind the curtain. Boy, you definitely want to pay no attention to the man behind that curtain. Am I right, folks? Is this thing on? Okay. So, yeah, it was like a good amount of books. An average at the very least. But, they were all like number 2 issues. See, number 2 is a code for poop. Oh, you knew that. But I got a couple picks here for you. So first up is it's also my pick for the shop. This is Green Arrow #1, written by Joshua Williamson and drawn by Sean Izaakse. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It's been a while since I've read Green Arrow. Green Arrow, despite being basically Hawkeye and Batman combined, has always been a character I've enjoyed. Probably largely due to the Benny O'Neill, Neil Adams Green Lantern Green Arrow title from the 1970s, which is largely considered a classic. It's probably my favorite Neil Adams thing, which I know is a little, what do you call, obvious, I guess, but I find Neil Adams to be kind of overrated in general. The last Green Arrow series I read was, I want to say around 2013 or so, when Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino, who are a great creative team, they've done a few books together now. And that was really fun. And then I want to say, there's been Andy Diggle wrote Green Arrow Year 1. I want to say around that same time. Maybe a little bit before. He's a pretty easy, his family died or some shit. He was stranded on an island for years, and so that's how he learned to be a really good archer. And he's also a lefty, which is something that always appeals to me about, even though he's filthy rich. And yeah, they're not doing, this is Dawn of DC across the tops of all their books now. I don't think they're doing a hard reboot, but they did just do another Crisis, which usually is an indication that something got rebooted. If nothing else, just the books, #1. So I haven't been paying too much attention because I just kind of haven't, I don't know. There are times where I'm a little more invested in DC, and this is not one of those times. I still like the smaller books and the smaller characters, like Justice Society. That Doom Patrol was pretty good. Shit like that. But I haven't, Green Arrow is a little, and even for the marquee characters, he's kind of B-list. Main reason I decided to pick this up, though, is because it was written by Josh Williamson. Josh Williamson used to be a customer at San Diego Comics back in, I guess this would have been, I don't know, late aughts? Mid to late aughts? Yeah, that sounds right. And I've told this story already this week, but I'll do it again. When I used to work at the shop back in San Diego, our routine every Wednesday was we would show up because Wednesday is when the new books would come out. So we get to the shop a couple hours before opening. My boss would have to bribe the UPS guy to make us his first stop. Because otherwise we could be sitting there till 3 or 4 in the afternoon without any new books to sell. It's much different now. They send them on Tuesday, sometimes even well before that. So this whole rigmarole that we used to have to go through is all bye-bye, which is lucky. Hell, it's lucky I don't have to help break the books down anymore. But that was just it. So like we open at 10:30, and sometimes the books wouldn't even get there till like 10. So we have to open all the boxes. There's like 8 or 9 boxes. We have to open them all. We have to take all the comic books out. We have to put them into individual stacks by title. We have to count how many is in each stack, and we have to write the number down and put it on like a little slip of paper on top of the stack. It's like a whole process, right? And left unmolested, we could get it done pretty quickly, but it was never quick enough to be done before we opened. So, but even that wasn't really much of a problem because, it's 10:30 on a Wednesday. Most people are at fucking work. But there was one guy who was there every Wednesday at 10:15 a.m. And I was like, dude, I am as excited as you are about New Comic Book Day. It's largely why I have this job, so that I can get my comic books even sooner. But we're trying to work here. He wasn't rude or shitty at all, ever, at any point. But it was like he would come in and start taking stuff, the new stuff, and we'd have to, I have to change the number on the we get very, boy, I'll tell you. There was, around this time, there was me, the owner, and 2 other dudes, and a collection of clucking hens you've never seen in your fucking life. And I used to live behind a chicken farm when I was a kid. Very briefly, fortunately. Not briefly enough, certainly. And what's that in the back? Yes, this was Josh Williamson that I'm talking about. Josh Williamson used to live in San Diego, and I feel like a lot of creators, mainstream creators, kind of pass through there and or Los Angeles before they go to Portland. It used to be New York was the destination if you wanted to work in comics. So that's where Marvel and DC were located. DC moved to Los Angeles about 10 years ago, so that's not even accurate now. But even well before that, for whatever reason, all these creators have started moving to Portland. I wonder if there is like an article about that or something. I mean, I definitely remember a time in the punk scene in San Diego where I knew a ton of people who moved to Portland or Phoenix. And it was because those were much cheaper. Southern California is very expensive to live in, which I don't notice or mind so much because I grew up here. But I moved to LA from San Diego, and in comedy, obviously, I'd meet a lot of people from different parts of the country. And to a man, they go, man, it's so expensive out here. And I go, I find it's actually somewhat cheaper. Like I feel like, there's much more space, but yeah, San Diego's is kind of pricey because it's smaller and beautiful, and you can go fuck itself as far as I'm concerned. But I meant, like, Williamson lived there. Brian K. Vaughan lived there for a minute. I think Kevin Eastman lives there, like I was telling that story not too long ago. San Diego started becoming a kind of a destination for comic book artists when Jack Kirby moved to LA. And I think eventually San Diego. He might have had a place in San Diego. But San Diego was where, obviously, Comic-Con started. And that was Jack. Like, when Jack moved out to the coast, it was a big fuck you to the industry. Not that the industry gave a shit, but he was like, you know what, I fought Nazis. I'm going to go live in a more temperate climate. And you can all send my shit in. I don't need to come in there and have Stan pretend to make up stuff. Because by that point, him and Stan weren't even talking to each other. Stan had also moved to Los Angeles to become famous, which he succeeded. But yeah, San Diego always seemed like kind of if for no other reason than Comic-Con. When I was a kid in the 90s and Comic-Con was huge, but only really within the comic book industry, it became a crossroads. And I think a lot of creators came to San Diego for that convention because it was a can't miss convention. It was the biggest show of the year. And I feel like a ton of them were like, I'm just going to stay here. This is a nice place. Which I kid the San Diego. It's a beautiful city, and I'm very proud to call it my hometown. If I never see it again, that would be fine. But that does not change what I said previously. Anyway, end sidebar. So, yeah, Josh used to come in every week super early. And for the first few weeks, at least, maybe even the first couple of months, we would get really snippy about it. God, this fucking guy. And but that's the thing. He was never shitty or rude. He was always like, and I think he kind of, I don't think we were that subtle, but he could probably pick up on the vibe. But he never said anything because he was like, I'm not doing anything wrong, and he wasn't. He was just kind of underfoot, and it wasn't a big deal. And then eventually, I got to talking to the guy. What do you know? And he turned out to be a pretty nice guy, and we had a lot of similar tastes. When he did move to Portland, he donated his entire collection to us because he was one of these guys that would buy a shitload of comics every week, read them, throw them in a box, and never think about them again. He didn't even bother with bags and boards, which to me is still, I wouldn't dream of something like that. But it's probably a much healthier way to approach it. I have begun to sort of adopt that. Like, if I'm missing an issue of something somewhere, I don't stress about it too hard. Because even if I do track it down, I'm going to read it and just kind of forget about it anyway. So it's not that big a deal. That is, I mean, even saying that out loud, there's a big part of me that's like, what are you talking? You can't. We need it all. So, okay. Yeah. So then, while he was still working, or living in San Diego, and I think he got his first couple, like, I remember with him telling me, like, about pitching the Image and stuff, and I'm always down to hear insiders, dirt, or stories, dirt, exactly, but, yeah, he's, we would shoot the shit a lot. And then he moved to Portland to make a real go at it, and he'd done I wonder if I have it now, it wouldn't be in this room, he did a kid's book that was, like, Halloween themed, like Dracula, there was something, I don't remember now. It was pretty good, though. And then there was another book that it was like a very small press. And it was a very Umbrella Academy. I think it preceded Umbrella Academy, but it was like a super-powered high school, I want to say, of some sort. I am definitely not remembering this right. And, but I mean, it wasn't my favorite, but I was happy to buy. I'm always happy to buy books by, creators I even haven't, known. Then he got, I want to say, I don't remember what his kind of break was, but he started writing for Marvel. And he had a series that I always kind of harken back to called Illuminati, which I don't know if you remember when the last Doctor Strange movie was coming out, the first appearance of the Illuminati skyrocketed. The Illuminati is basically, or it was basically, like the kind of the heads of the Marvel universe, Professor X, Black Bolt, Namor, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, I want to say. And they are kind of pulling the strings, hence the name. Williamson's Illuminati, it was the same name, the same kind of logo, but it was a completely different team. It was like the Hood led it, Thunderball was on it, and I was like, dude, sold. Thunderball is one of the Wrecking Crew. He's my favorite because he's the black guy, and he has like a wrecking ball as his weapon. The Black Bruce Banner, they called him. So yeah, it was great fun. And it was one of those books that it was under the radar, and it was clearly never going to last more than a year. I don't know if it even made it that far. I want to say The Flash was his first break over at DC. Like, that was the first book he started, the first major mainstream book he started writing, again, to my recollection. And it took off. Haha, The Flash, right? And ever since then, he's just been pulling more and more books down at DC. And I haven't read a ton of them because I'm just not that into DC. But now that he's on Green Arrow, which is a character that I have a little more familiarity with and like a little bit more, I'm looking forward to it. But I will say, man, it's pretty cool seeing guys that I knew. He was just a guy. He was just a guy that came in the comic book store all the time. And now he's writing marquee titles for DC. And it's really only been about, 10, 15 years. I know that sounds like a long time, but shit, I wish I had that much to show for at least that much time I put into whatever the fuck. I was trying not to, then I ended up sounding bitter. It was like my brain was like, oh wait, we need to sound more bitter. Also this week, Darth Vader, Black, White, and Red #1. I'm very excited for this one. This black, white, and red series has been really fun. The only one I passed on was the Carnage one because that's the character I don't care about either. But as the title might imply, they're black and white comics. I'm sure I've discussed this. Black and white comics, but they use red for certain things. I'm so happy that Darth Vader has found this second life as a major comic book character in the Marvel Star Wars. When Marvel got the Star Wars license in 2014 and launched their book, and Jason Aaron was the first one to write Star Wars, and it was so good. And they had all these. So there was Darth Vader had a title right away. What else? There was at least a couple others. Now I can't. Well, I think Dr. Aphra. I don't think she was right out of the gate her own title, but I could be mistaken. And the Darth Vader series has, I want to say, ended at least twice. But I mean, they keep giving him one shots and stuff like that. I mean, the guy is still to me anyway, one of the more compelling characters in that saga. However you might feel about it. And yeah, and plus look at this. I mean, this killer's row. You got Jason Aaron, you got Leonard Kirk, you got Torrin Gronbeck, you got Santa Claus Jansen, and Peach Momoko, who I don't much care. I mean, I like her work, but it's not my favorite. So yeah, this is going to be super fun and self-contained and probably hella violent. So that makes it one of my. Hey, what does this say again? What do you mean in the back? This bit, I miss doing this bit, don't you? All right. When I used to do this in my old apartment, I used to talk to my fake PA. And I've been a real one since I moved in here. You can't see him, he's over this way. He's just chained up over here. Alright, so I read just moments ago, Warlock Rebirth #1. This is good. We have a reveal of a new character. I don't know if I want to spoil it, but this is the first appearance of Eve Warlock. I'll let you figure out how she plays into this team. No, it's good. It's good old Ron Mars, Ron Lim, cosmic stuff, and it was like it never went away. You know what I mean? But I don't really have much beyond that. Like, I will say I am getting at least a touch uncomfortable with how many books are now nostalgia books and how many books that I'm buying because of nostalgia. I used to hate nostalgia. Eschewed it, even. Because to me, it's not nostalgia if it's just good stuff. What really, I remember like in the 90s, 70s nostalgia was all the rage. And if that's not enough to sour you on the concept of nostalgia in general, well, then I don't know what to do for you. But what really killed the term nostalgia for me was oldies format radio, believe it or not. When I was a kid, I'm talking about nostalgia. I keep starting every sentence when I was a kid. Growing up in, wherever I grew up, I don't remember. The oldie station was KBS 95, 94.9 on your FM dial. And it was the only radio station I could even halfway stomach. And I remember at this time, like in the mid to late 90s, I was working a lot of, just shit retail jobs. And so I wouldn't have a tape deck or necessarily access to a tape deck for my whole shift. So I'd have to listen to the radio. And that was the only station I could even halfway stomach. And it sucked. I want to make that clear also. It was terrible. As pretty much every radio station did. I've never understood, aside from Howard Stern when he was on terrestrial radio, I've never in my life sought out the radio. Can't wait to listen to the radio. And people have this, another bird walk, good, right on time. People have this very romantic association with the radio, which I honestly have never understood. I watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High recently for the first time in many years. And that Raised on the Radio song, I want to say about the Ravens, who were nothing after that. But it's Judge Reinhold's character's theme. Raised on the radio, just an all-American boys. Washing the cruising vessel. I hate that fucking song. It is one of the worst songs. And that era of music especially, in early to mid-'80s, you had all kinds of fucking white guy bands like that. And I blame Bruce Springsteen, frankly. hey man, we're rocking out, and that very quickly became a nostalgia act. The oldie station used to drive me particularly insane though, because it was all aimed at my parents. Which, I get it. That's the smart money. You're not going to try and market an oldie station to a 21-year-old, even though I was the only, that was the only station I ever listened to. But it was all this, hey, remember this old tune from when you used to make out in the back of your dad's car? And it's like, leave my father out of this. And that's, I mean, yet another reason to hate boomers. I know that the Gen Zs and the whoever the hell fuck else are in on the ground floor of boomer hating, but let me tell you, there was plenty to hate about them for generations previous, and the oldies radio format was definitely one of them. Hey, and it was just because it was so, it would take this great killer old music, you know, I mean, some of them were just pop garbage anyway, so you could do whatever you want with it, but some of it had fucking real teeth or edge or whatever you want to say about it, until it was used time and again. Man, like Splish Splash by, what is that, Bobby Darin? I used to love that song. But then after a while, all I could ever picture was the Keaton family from the Keaton family from Family Ties, bopping around in their kitchen. Fuck off. It is so antithetical to everything rock music is to me, which is at minimum a little horny, and that was not happening on KBS 95. K worst, more like. Anyway, so yeah, nostalgia can go fuck itself. This is still good because it's not so much like it's nostalgia. It's, oh, this is taking me back. It's, oh, this is picking up where I left off when I was 14. So, okay, good. We're back to it. Terror War #1. This is great. This was not what I was expecting. Honestly, I didn't know what I was expecting. Although I will go ahead and admit to some bias that when I saw the title Terror War and a character who appears to be Middle Eastern in descent, and I think that checks out with what I read here, that it had something to do with terrorists or terrorism. It does not. At least not. It might be analogous. It might be symbolic of such, but it's not. Terror in this instance means an actual literal night terror. This is a world in the far-flung future where people's most horrific fears will suddenly appear and come to life and kill the fuck out of them and anybody else who happens to be in the way. And our main character, Muhammad Cho, here is the leader of a squad of people like, you know, terror hunters, terror warriors, and they're like mercenaries. So they hunt these things down for money. So it's a very established world right away, and I'm all on board. Like I say with a lot of these books, you really have to wait for at least the second issue, if not the third, to kind of be able to make up your mind. But I've got a good feeling about this one. And all that shit I was saying about Saladin Ahmed last week, I really feel like I'm onto something with it. Like it really feels like I don't know how else to say this, but I don't know how to back this up even. His writing feels more relaxed. And I feel like I could be projecting that onto it, but I also could just be fucking right. Stranger things have happened. Finally, Packless 6. Oh, thank you for coming back, Packless. So, Dustin Weaver, the artist and writer of Packless, writes a thing in the back about how he had finished this 5 years ago when it was intended to be released, but then he wanted to have a couple more issues done, and that's what took 5 years. So I was like, okay, that's fine. You could have just put this one out, and I would have had that, and then wait. But it's also fine. And now it seems though, since he does have at least one more issue banked, and he said he's going to do it quarterly, so that's good. It's not monthly, but comics don't need to be monthly. I think that's an outdated expectation, and I don't know that anybody's clamoring for monthly books, except for old farts like me, maybe. But I don't even want one. Anyway, so the story 1949 was the part 2, and I did not remember part 1 at all. But it was pretty easy to kind of, oh, okay, it's a kind of future-y, steampunky thing that will go back to 1949. And it's very Dickian, and I'm into it. The cover story, They'll Bury You Where You Stand, I'd actually had read before. When I read it just now, I was like, whoo. And then in the end, he said that was like a 2 or 3 page story, maybe 4 or 5, in a Western anthology called Outlaw Territory, which Image Comics put out. I don't remember when, to be honest with you, because I came to them late. But I have all 3. They were trade paperback only anthologies, and they were all Western. I fucking love Westerns, especially because they were kind of weird, and this one's kind of weird. This is my favorite kind of Western story, too. Super bleak and existential. And that, to me, is the Old West. I think like it's that weird thing where, like, your old-timey, like, Lone Ranger Westerns were all about progress, and things are going to be much better once we get these red men cleared out of here. And then you had the flip of that in the 60s with the spaghetti westerns, where you had much more like, no, God has forsaken us all in this fucking desert. So let's just kill each other. And that's, believe it or don't, my favorite. So did you pick that up? Because I just ripped one. I thought it was going to be quiet, and I thought even if I did that, you wouldn't notice. But then I had to call attention to it. I don't know if you could hear it, as I think I already said. Okay, well,